because this is not going to help us for now. But we can go to here, right? And the first thing I want us to do today is make a duplicate of our command line tic-tac-toe game. I mean, you can also just write over what you have, but if you want to have both, you can. It's essentially just adding onto it. But I'm going to do a duplicate because I'm going to move it into unit 2. Okay, that's how you make a duplicate. And let's do this. I'm just pulling it up.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Have a good night. Thank you. Very friendly. Okay, tic-tac-toe copy and code. We will open this up. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we should probably do is just reacquaint ourselves with the command line game that we built. We had a board class, which we may need to add a couple things, but for the most part, we're going to just build upon this. So let's just remind ourselves what the board class did. It had a constructor. It created this board, which was an array of arrays. We kept track of moves remaining. We had set winner to be undefined, and we had this moves object, where the keys represented the possible indices of positions. Bless you. We had a move is valid move that would check whether or not. I'm going to delete the comment down code that was for before. And we also had a place mark, right? We took in the symbol and the mark and added that. And we also had a find winner is horizontal, vertical, diagonal, transpose, and display board. Right? Familiar? Have we seen this before? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Right, we also had a computer player. Didn't do too much, just went and got a move. We had our human player, similar nothingness. For this, we will have to end up removing readline sync, but we can wait for the error to do that. And then we had our game. Took in 2 players, kept track of a current player, created a board, had a switch player method. Let's just clean this up a bit. We had a game over, a play which said, while this isn't over, let's keep taking a turn, displaying the board, getting the move, placing the mark, etc., etc. And then when the game was over, we did this console logging of the winning board. Right? We could separate this into another function, potentially, which we will today. And then we had this game stuff to get it to play. But today, we don't need that. Questions on the original game? I have 2 screens open, so I actually want them different sizes, but it's not going to do that for me, apparently. All right, let's get to it. So there's a couple so the first thing we need to do is create our HTML and our index.js file. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Some reason, here we go. So let's make it index.html. Let's go into there, make an HTML5 box, and say, call it tic-tac-toe in the title. Questions so far? Hopefully not too bad. Okay.
The other stuff.
Oh, it's something like, I think it's called IntelliSense or something. It's a package that allows me to not type the whole thing and get most of it. Big time saver. You can use it if you already know how to do it all on your own. If you know how to do it all on your own, add the package. If you don't add the package yet. Do it more times until you learn how to do it all. Okay? That will be up to you personally to decide when you're ready for that. Okay, so inside of the body, Let's create a header. I'm going to call this tictactoe. All right, but yeah, today will be kind of hard because it is kind of a conceptual jump, and that's okay if you're struggling. Okay, not yet. You shouldn't be struggling yet, but if you end up struggling, that's okay. However, this should help you because the hangman game is what we're revisiting, and we'll be assigning at the end of tonight to start going back and turning your hangman game into a browser version. The idea is you should be able to reuse almost all of your code just with a slightly different interface, which is what we're going to be doing today. Okay, so that's why we're doing today. Div. So I'm going to create a div that is just going to have an ID, and this is like going to be my information for the player. Like I'm going to grab the player, I'm going to say whose turn it is, I'm going to say if the game is over and who wins. All right, so I'm just going to give them an ID called like player text. And I'm going to add a div here that I'm just going to call ID, and let's make it TTT for tic-tac-toe. All right, this is where all of the game, like the board and stuff, is going to live. And I also want to create a button eventually for us to play again. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So I'm going to add a button, and I'm going to write inside of it, play again. And I'm going to give this an ID that tells me what it does, so it's easy to remember. I'll call it play again. Okay, any questions so far? What? Oh, great idea. So Deja says we got to link it to our index.js file, which we haven't created yet. Let's go ahead and create that. But before we actually link it, there's a small thing I have to discuss with you. So we are relying on a lot of folders importing and exporting from each other. This is not something we can use out of the box with the browser. Okay? They would have to be separate script tags written inside of the head, and they'd have to be in the specific order to which they refer to the other ones. Does that make sense, kind of? Okay. So because we can't use this importing exporting. We're going to figure out a way to use it, but at the moment we can't actually do that out of the box. And so what happens is our script tags have to follow the specific order. We would have, like a human doesn't rely on anything, right? It can live by itself. But game uses human, computer player, and board, right? Okay, this board, so if I put game first, it would say like, oh, there's nothing for human. So I have to say like computer player, because computer is pretty solo. Board is solo. I mean, this is part of writing clean code, is that they're not completely coupled. So that kind of helps us. And then it would be game. It would have to be this order, because as they get introduced and read as a script tag, all of a sudden those functions become available only after it's been read.
It's like defining a variable.
Yeah, it's kind of like defining a variable, but it's adding code into the scope of the world, kind of. Also, this is my first time I've ever worn this shirt. But it just popped into my head because I'm in front of a bunch of people looking at me. So we got this human computer player boarding game. Now, this could be kind of an annoying thing because as you build projects and build more things, they might draw off and connect from. So if we built like another class for some reason, probably if it wasn't really tic-tac-toe, but let's say I have like a giraffe player, right? I couldn't just add this in the bottom because game would have to handle it. So I'd have to like figure out where draft goes. And if somebody else started working on my code, that's pretty unpleasant. Okay? So there's this thing called Webpack, which bundles, it's called Webpack, and it bundles all of the code together into one giant file. Okay? So that way we only need one script tag and everything is accessible. We don't have to worry about the order of everything showing up. Okay? So the way we do that is a little bit of a thing. First off, we're going to create a file. And we have to call it webpack.config.js. Okay? And I'm going to slack out what we need to add to it. And I'll just kind of briefly talk about it. Okay, so in Slack now, you'll see this code snippet that exports. So what this essentially is going to say is we're going to have module.exports. That's like how we've exported all those other things. If you remember, we would do like module.exports human player, module.exports board. And then we give it some instructions. So we say the entry file, where all of our code is going to come from or go through, is going to be called the index.js. We talk about the path, and we say from the entry point, this is what we want output. We want the current path, and we want to have it add a file called bundle.js. This is where all the code is going to be bundled. These talk about some dev tools watch and that we are developing. Don't worry about that as much. Okay, but you need to paste that into your own Webpack if you want this to work. Okay, so we're doing all right. But there's a couple more things we need to do. We need to open up our terminal. And we have to, remember how we did npm install readline sync in the past? This one we're going to npm install Webpack. So I'm going to say npm install, or you can just write I for short. And I'll say Webpack. Hopefully you can see that. And I hit enter. So this is going to allow Webpack to run. This is like all of that external code that we're installing from somebody else's work and library, and they're going to say, all right, we're going to take all of this code that we get through the index file, because the index is going to connect to everything, and then we're going to create this output file and call it bundle.js. Oh, it's taking a minute.
So, real quick, the webpack.config.js, you went to the Explorer to get that?
I just created that file,
You just created the file? Okay.
and then I added those configurations. Good question. Right? Ask lots of questions if you have them, especially when we have nothing to do here. This is just going to bundle our file. Webpack is something that's pretty popular that you'll probably hear about again someday. When we get into Create React App, which is a quick way to make a React app, they have a Webpack built in for you behind the scenes. But it's also totally possible to create a React app. Without Create React App, you just would do it with Webpack. You'd have to configure it. It's a lot more configuration for that kind of project. Okay, and then we have to npm install one more thing. I should have done them both at the same time, but I didn't. So we're going to say npm I, and we're going to do Webpack dash CLI. This means command line interface. So we're also going to do the Webpack command line interface. That's one of the negatives to using Webpack. I mean, it's really a great tool. One of the negatives is it has a little bit of a starting value, right? We have to put in a little bit of time and process to get it to work. But it shouldn't be too painful. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go. Are we like all okay on this step? Is it just still installing? You can move on to this step with me though. Okay, so then we're going to go to package.json, right? And you should see that you have these things as your dependencies. We have readline sync only because that's what we had in the past, but we really don't need that anymore. And we're going to go to our scripts, and we're going to throw in a comma inside after the word test. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to type in. Slow it down. Okay. I'm going to just do. It should be there. It was in our last. When you duplicated the project, it should still be in there. If you don't, for some reason, have a package JSON file, just do npm init to do that one. Okay, yeah, but if you don't have a package JSON, then write npm init, and then just hit enter a bunch of times.
You can do a dash y, so you can skip all that.
Oh. If you don't have a package JSON, if you duplicated it, it should be there, but it's okay. Because we had it last time. Okay, if you are here though, then this is the next step.
Not the package block, right?
This is the package JSON, not the log. And you're going to write build. Under test, you do a comma, build in quotes, colon, and then we're going to write in more quotes, web pack dash dash watch. So this means as we make changes in our code, Webpack is going to stay active and watch for those changes, and then as soon as those changes happen, it's going to rebundle it really quickly. So we'll constantly update. Otherwise, you have to kill Webpack, run it again, kill Webpack, run it again. This will allow it to continue to update as we update.
And that's after you install the CLI and all that stuff, right?
What are you talking about? Package JSON should show up after you've done that npm init. You can't have a file in it.
No, you install the CLI.
I mean, the version you're working is right. I'm doing that. No, it's just version. You have a CLI. If it complains, you know what it is.
So if you don't see it, you might have to just search for it because you probably already have it. All right, then we're going to add that script.
Sorry. The way this is fine, because you have something on 15 for you as a Webpack CLI, but I have a CLI here. Okay.
Did you down and install
So should I just do that?
Yeah, you can also write npm uninstall CLI if you want.
Okay, so let me just,
And then that will get rid of that. And you want to again install webpack-CLI. Yep.
The module exports, is it supposed to appear?
Just in that webpack. Like, just right here, yeah?
But I didn't get everything that it was just empty when I opened that up that package.
And that was something you were supposed to copy and paste that from
Oh,
Slack.
yeah, it's in Slack? Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I got it. I haven't installed these.
Okay.
Okay, are we nearly there? All right, I know it's like a little bit of setup, right? So, and then I want you to add this build webpack watch. Don't forget that comma on the end of text, okay? Everything has to be precise, so please be detail oriented. Okay, so I'm gonna save I'm gonna save my webpack, because I guess I didn't do that yet, and I'm gonna go ahead and run in my log npm run dash script, and I'm going to say build, and it's going to show us it's hitting webpack watch, and it's building the script. And you should see, if you're successful, that it created a bundle.js file in there. If it didn't do that, you have done something wrong.
npm run dash script and then build.
Yep, space.
npm, yeah, here, let me. npm runs dash script build.
Oh, okay, space. Error.
It's just running my plans. Exactly the same. I got that. Because I guess it's going to be that.
You got all your exports at the bottom, right?
Yeah. It was your game. Oh, can I see your history? And you tested it, saying cool. Thank you. I'll pull a new one.
It's everything we're gonna change. You got it? Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I wasn't like, I think I was, that's why I was like going back and forth.
Did you guys get it tomorrow? Oh man, once this is set up, everything should move a little smoother.
It's supposed to quit running or continue running? I was about to get Wait, no, I
If you go to tell me to look at NSFS, you have that as when? Oh. Are we like pretty much there?
Yeah.
What do you make? Okay. We gotta keep moving, or there's no way we'll have a chance of finishing, which I guess would be alright, but. Alright, clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands twice if you can hear my voice. Alright, so hopefully we're mostly there. And you've seen, we now have a bundle.js file. So let's get back to what Deja said, which was, hey, we gotta connect it. So we're gonna connect our bundle.js file. So back to our HTML, we're gonna write our script. Oops. Script with the source, yeah? And I'm gonna say /bundle.js. All right. And then it's time to put stuff in our index.js. We currently don't have anything going on. And you can just leave this Webpack running. If there's an error at some point, should turn red or it'll communicate to you. If it's green like this, it means everything is hunky-dory. Yeah? Okay, so we're going to go to our index.js. And what's the first thing we do when we're writing? Yeah?
We're gonna do the listen to DOM content loaded.
That's right. We're going to listen to DOM content loaded. So let's go ahead and say document.add event listener, and we will say DOM content loaded. And this takes in a callback function. Do we need to keep track of this event?
No.
No, right? So I'm not going to add an argument. And there we go. So we need our game to play somehow, right? So I'm going to take this opportunity to import my human player and my computer player, and my game class. So in the past, we've required with our, and I can do this outside of this. In the past, we did it with, we made a variable and we said require, right? That's okay. And as far as how Node currently works, that is how it works. But how most front-end things are written nowadays, we write it slightly differently. So we actually write it like this, where we say import. And this is how you'll do it a lot in React and later. We say import game from /game.js. Okay, and hopefully this will complain. I think it will. We'll see. Yes. Okay. So it complains, right? And it says, "Hey, node modules readline sync." It says it can't resolve this readline sync. So that's because readline sync is a node module for the backend, not for the front end. So that's one of the few things I'm going to change about our game. So we have that in our human player class. I'm just going to go ahead and comment that out, save it, and then hopefully we'll go back to green, which we do. Cool? Okay. So I said we also want to do our human player and computer player. So I'm just going to say, hang on. Human player, and we can do computer player.
If it's not highlighted, like if it's not glowing,
What do you mean if it's not glowing? Much?
it's like grayed out, the colors are grayed out.
Oh, it probably means that we're not using it yet. And so it's saying this is unused code. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can you repeat what you did again just to make the imports like no error in the terminal?
I saved it. I got rid of the readline sync. I commented out readline sync from our command line project. All right, please read the errors. They are there to help. The error messages are there to help you. Don't hate the error messages. Love them, because without them you would have no idea what's wrong. Okay? I know sometimes they're a little funky to read, but you will get better at it. All right, so hopefully most of us are here. Let's go ahead and create a couple human players. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this in, where I have let game equal new game, and I have these two humans. I have Corey and Beavis. Let's capitalize my name. I don't think so, because only game uses the board. Great question, though. So we've got some code here. If I run game.play, we'll see something kind of fun. I'm going to say game.play, which is what we used to have for our console game. And I'm going to go back to our website. Ooh, I haven't loaded our website yet. Let's go index it. Copy, path. Copy the path. Command V. Okay, so it complains, right? We see the HTML thing we have, and it says uncut error, game, webpack, imported, a default, and not a constructor. So it just is upset, probably because I think let's see if we exported our game. Okay, see, we haven't exported game anywhere. So that's why it's freaking out. So let's go ahead and export game. So again, we've been doing this module.exports. This is like kind of the ES5-y way of doing it. With the browser, we write something a little bit different. We say export, default, and then the name of the class. So export default game, which means I'm going to export this whole class. It's a little cleaner, right? It's kind of nicer. Hopefully you like it more than the require and module.exports. It's just like a browser thing, yeah. I think you can add a package in Node to make it work, but it's not native. It's working for us because we have Webpack.
So people don't have the computer player, is it a problem?
No.
Okay. So it's not a problem. You
But if
can
they
ask
copied it,
questions.
yeah, you can ask me.
Questions to Cory. You should stop and ask him.
Yeah, that's fine. If you want a computer player, right, all the note from the tictactoe is in the 6.4. That's where I copied this from. You're welcome to copy it too. Okay, let's see if that error is still there. Maybe it is. Now it says read line is not defined, but that's because we've taken it out of our human player. But we see it did print this board, right? Because that was our console game.
If you have a computer player, just comment it, because you will get an error otherwise, because you won't. I mean, I can see everybody with errors. So comment it.
They probably just, yeah. Don't worry about it for now. Yeah, you can comment it. Okay, so we've got this working, right? We can see that our old game is there, but we no longer want to play. So we go back to our index.js, and we're not actually playing this game anymore. This is how we played with the console. Instead, we need to create the game inside of the browser, right? And so the way we're going to do this is we're going to create a new class called a view class. All right, so we're going to go create our new file. I'm going to call this view.js. And this is your task, right? Create a class called view class. Should take in, what should it take in? Should take in the game, or take in a game object and a element to manipulate. All right, so you do that over the next minute or two. Right, so this is just like any class we've ever created. It just takes in something called game and something for the element.
Sorry, Chris, let's go back to the index.
I'm gonna go back there in a minute, but yeah. It's not letting me. No, I don't need that first line. That's a mistake. Good. I'm gonna go back to the directions.
And then the time is just
Just importing everything.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we don't want this.
You did import
I did not. Alright, so you should be building a view class first. You can even just do that. There, right?
You want to sit closer? I think the best thing for you.
Notice how the web pack should stay running, right? Keep watching. Okay, I think that's enough time. Okay, so in our view class, let's go ahead and just build this out. We are going to say class view, curly braces, it has a constructor, and that constructor takes in a game and an element. And we're going to say this dot game. What's this represent?
Instance of the game.
Instance of game. And this dot L is equal to L. Okay? So this is what we should have up to this point. And I think that's all we need at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this other code. That was directions. Okay, Webpack looks cool. Let's go ahead and export this as well. And we'll say export default view. I'm going to save that. And let's go ahead and import this in our index.js. So just gonna double that, boom, view. Okay, and we saw, if you watch your Webpack, it will keep like doing quick little updates. If you actually want to look in your web bundle.js file, you can see like this is all stuff that Webpack has built for you. And if you keep going far enough, you'll start to see your code. Like this is board.js, right? That looks like our board class. It has computer play. It has all of the code. It's the culmination of everything. But we don't really need it to be open. It's just a big old ugly file. But it allows us to only use one script tag, and we don't have to worry about the order of everything. So that's a pretty nice benefit. Okay, so let's inside of here we got to use our view. So we've created an instance of game, and let's go ahead and make a new view. So we're going to say new view, and we're going to pass in our game. And we need to pass in an element that we don't currently have. So let's go ahead and grab an element. So I'm going to say let L. And which element do you think we should grab from the document? Isaiah? TTT, right? That's where the whole game, that's what we're going to build into this game. So I'm going to say document dot query selector, and that's going to say ttt. Oh, that should all be in quotes. Okay. And now we have an element, if this works. So let's test that this is working. Let's test that something is actually happening here. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to go into my view, and I'm going to throw a debugger in my constructor. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go back to the HTML page, and I'm going to refresh, and we hit our debugger, and I'm going to look at what I have. So I'm going to look, well, I don't need that. I'm going to look at game, and I go, okay, we passed in a successful game. That looks pretty right as a game object, an instance of the game. And we can also look at our L, which is this div ttt. Not too shabby. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of some conceptual jumps coming up. I know a lot of this has been processed. You'll probably have to redo most of these things for your Hangman game. If you built your Hangman game pretty nicely, you're only really going to need to probably build a view class, and you can reuse your Hangman from the last project. Okay? Okay, so that works. I can remove my debugger. So our next task is I want us to create a display board method. Okay, so here's the goal. So you're going to say display board. Build a tic-tac-toe game made up of 3 ULs containing 3 LIs each. Oops. Okay, and for this to happen, let me see. Because we might need to iterate over our game board. So I just want us to also add one thing real quick. It's freaking out because I haven't commented it out. That's why Webpack has turned red. Comment. So this is going to be something that's going to help us inside of our board class somewhere up here. I want us, because I don't want us to key into board, right? Because we have our board. Our board is going to be this.game.board, and that will give us access to our board. But that will give us an access to the instance of our board. Okay, so what I want us to do is give us access to this actual array. So I'm going to add a reveal function in here called reveal. That's just going to return this .board. Okay? So you should do that as well. I think it will probably help you with that next challenge. And besides that, start working on this display board. Helpful hints, create elements, right? Append elements. Oops, I don't know why that's not highlighting. Create elements. Append elements, and it's pretty much all you'll need. Think of like inner, final hint. Why is there this annoying box? Inner HTML. Okay, these are your hints. Try to figure out if you can construct something. Don't worry if it looks terrible, because we can add a little bit of styling that we're going to do. We won't really teach too much. I'll like give you something to paste. But go ahead and try to build something to then show up on the browser. All right, if you want to check if it works, you can call this .display board from in here. Instead of the debugger, you'll write this .display board. Okay, if it works, you'll see something on your screen that resembles somewhat of a board. Yeah, it says, you see there's something wrong with your import computer player. Are you exporting your computer player?
Is there any review?
Let's save your video. You can use that reveal function.
No, no. The issue before was that that was before. And that was what yeah. Oh, okay. So we have to keep it well, yeah, it was a whole idea.
You have to go to him, that's, no, it's tictactoe.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about this, right? How do we do? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs side. Yeah, I know. This is really gonna be tough because it's the very first time we've done something like this. Okay, so like, don't get too frustrated. It's like totally expected to not be great at this one today. The point of this is just to have an introduction. Right, we have to get introduced to all the concepts eventually, right? Including like hard concepts of like a new way to look at things. This will help us a lot down the road, especially when it comes to making our hangman, and we'll also do it again, another one with like the Russian roulette, so we'll have another chance to see something like it. So it's just the very first one, it's going to be like extra tough, yeah? And there's a few steps that need to be ironed out. I'm assuming nobody really had success with this, yeah? All right, cool. So that's like, I'm going to walk us through it. So the first thing I'm going to add is a game div, because I want this game div to be where the board is with inside. I want the game div to hold these 3 ULs and 3 elements. So I'm going to go ahead and create that first. So I'm going to say game div, and I'm going to assign that to document dot. Yeah, that's right. Wait, we can do this part. Create element. By the way, if we get through this, like all of your other assignments are going to feel a lot easier. Because this is definitely the hardest thing we've seen today. Dot create element, and let's just go ahead and create a div. Okay. I'm going to also give this div a ID called board div. So I'm going to say game div.id, and I'm going to give it this board div. If we remember from the beginning, inside of our constructor, we passed an element and a game. So that element holds everything, and so I want to clear this every single time I go to display the board, because I'm going to call this method a few times throughout the game. In fact, I'm going to call it every time. And so I'm just going to clear that first. So I'm going to say this.l.inner HTML. And what can I write to clear it all? What? Can't hear. Empty string, is that what you said? Empty string. So this is going to make sure that our div is completely empty, our game div. Okay. And now I want to iterate through the board that's within my game. Okay. So I'm going to say this dot game dot board. Right? If we remember that board, our game is an instance of game, which is an object, right? And it has a board property. So I'm saying this dot game dot board. This gives me the instance of the board for our game. And now I'm going to call that reveal to help us so that I have the actual array. So I'm going to say dot reveal. And now I can use an array method to iterate through it. So I'm going to use for each. So I'm going to say dot for each. And I'm going to give it a row, right? Because every array inside of that matrix is considered one row. And inside of here, I'm going to create my UL, right? So I'm going to say let UL equal document dot what? Create element UL. Okay, and let's add a. I'm going to add a class property to it. And the specific way I actually do that, we haven't learned this yet, but this will help us with our styling. I'm just going to say ul.classlist.add, and I'm going to pass in row. This means that it's going to get the property class, you know, that class property we have seen as an HTML attribute, and we're going to assign that to be row. So that way all of our ULs will have this property row. Doug.
We're using like rows and columns. Why don't we create a table instead of
We probably could. I've already built it this way. But yeah, that's a great question. So the question is like, if we're going to use rows and columns, why not make it a table? You totally could, right? There's lots of different ways that you could do it. I've just created quite a few games, and I've always done it this way. I never use tables, and so I didn't even think to use it. But that might have been a better solution. Okay, and then if we want to look at every element in the matrix, what do we need to do? Okay, so we actually have to loop through the rows, right? Because with every row, we want to loop through the row so we get every single element in the matrix. So for that, I'm going to say row dot for each, and this will be an element. It's a little confusing that I'm calling it L. I'm going to put val in here because I already have a this.l in my class, which represents the element that got passed in. And so what do I want to create next? LIs, right? Because I said we're going to put 3 LIs per every UL. So we're going to say let LI equal document dot create element LI. And we want to change its inner text. And we want that inner text to reflect what that value actually is. So the way we can do that is we'll say li dot inner text, right? So some of these should look pretty familiar. And we'll assign that to the val. No, because it's the actual element, the actual val. Otherwise, we'll just have the string val. What might I want to do next? Any guesses? Marvin? From who to who? Yeah, so let's add each li into the current ul. So we're going to say ul dot append child, and we'll pass in our li. Oops. Okay, and after each row has been completed, what do we want to do with that row? So we've added all the LIs into one row, or UL. What do we want to do with that UL? Right, so we actually want to append it to that game div, what we call it. So we'll say game div dot append child, and we'll pass in the UL. And then, at the very, very end of the whole thing, what do we need to do? Append it to the body, or specifically, we actually want to append it to that element that was passed in with us. So that TTT from the beginning. So we'll say this dot L dot append child game div. Okay? I know that's a lot. So don't worry if that was a struggle. Let's go check our work. Refresh the page, and we get our board. Looks pretty ugly, but we get the board, yeah? No? Is everybody calling display board inside of their constructor? Right, so I'm calling it just to make sure it works. Otherwise, we don't have any way of calling it. Well, open up your console and take a look at the error message.
Yeah, I think it's probably in the game. Yeah, but I'm gonna have my game too.
seems to be working. Why? Okay, can we go to the console? Should type game? Okay. No. Can you refresh totally this? I want to see the lowercase.
If I have a mistake in my file, for example, I say because you know my
Yeah. Website
it worked. But it's up to whatever. If it's errors smash,
Yeah.
it will be not see it has that matter with
The bundle of the prompts. Would we try to replace it?
I can. Okay. Let me go to the
Okay, cool. I
Let me do that.
like what you said. Okay, and let's see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, tell me that that is not a function. For example, spelling errors.
Cannot review. Okay, so okay, that's right. These are games that plays untitled, I guess.
Yeah. So it's one of it's I don't understand why. So what I was thinking actually is that view I'm not importing anything, right? That's all happening in index, right?
Yes.
Could that be the possible issue or is
You should be importing something.
no, you never import anything to be able to get it to run.
No, because view is a standalone.
Could it be something in like game or files?
Okay, if we begin to control log, just this, do we get something?
For you?
So here line 8. Yes. 8.
Yeah.
6.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
No worries.
Yes,
Press enter. Sorry, and put hey, hello, or yes, hey. Okay, so your console is working. Okay, carry on. I want you to console.log this.game.
Here, that same one? Or so I get rid of this, right?
Yeah, get rid of that this.game.
Oh, just to see if it's connected?
Yes, exactly. You have access to
Yes, you do.
the tictactoe.
Yeah.
This one. Okay. Okay, can we try this.game.board? Let's go step by step. Do you have a this.game.board? I hope so. Undefined. Okay, this is the part.
Support.
So this.game game, you have it, the dot board is not defined. So why is the dot board not defined?
And that's gonna be my game budget.
Yeah, possible.
Maybe it's,
Yeah, thank you. Ooh,
yeah.
I was cold.
Goodness,
It was
squeezing to the bone.
Yeah.
Okay, this dot board is
That's the same error I'm getting. Literally the same exact error.
Can you show me the board? Okay. We know all that works.
Okay.
Did you reuse your code or did you
Oh, I reused this in my,
okay, it was working.
yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
use the same
But it
exact.
may-
I
it's
just looked
exactly the same.
Sorry, guys.
It's good, just to make sure that everything.
Seems to be why it's so not building, and there's no error in the thing. I put the debugger to try to see if it's hands on getting executed. So when I put it inside the constructor,
Why are you importing
Okay.
Don't use the MVC.
So it's some
Oh,
connection.
Import in game.js. If you don't use human player as
Oh yeah, I deleted that.
you can delete it. Okay, good. So, game is pretty good. If it was working before, it should be working. Let me go back to the yes. The one where it's undefined.
This one right here.
Yes. No, I didn't. Okay, can you go back to the view?
The index, right?
So your view is with uppercase, last view here.
Just make sure, yes, it should be, yeah.
Or can we go back to index? So do you can show me your Chrome page again? We have to show. We have nothing there. Yeah, we know exactly where it is, but
We don't know how to fix it.
okay, can we go back to the view? Yes, this one is so this is not working. Can you console this
Same thing. I didn't understand. Like I literally copied every single thing. Same thing. As the board is not defined, you add a new game, and that's it.
Maximum cost side to side.
okay, can we go back?
Doesn't mean it's gonna Oh,
When it's on your browser,
yeah.
when it writes exceed maximum code count, it means you fill out the code stack of the memory of the machine.
It's just going on forever.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's remove that from our console.log. And now I'm going to the period. Is
Like,
Now they are very, yes, now they are very, very
oh man.
tough,
That's
but nobody that you crush it, you will need to restart.
oh man. That's
So now it's like, yeah, it's quite.
way stronger. It's crazy.
I'm missing something, but no, you're doing exactly the same.
So the display board is getting something. So it's successfully.
Display board is getting something. This display. Okay, display board is what you are calling here.
Yeah.
This is where we can you show me? Okay, can you do a replica from display board? Yeah. Command C. Yes. Then you will go to the modify class and command V to paste.
Oh.
In fact, it's right there. Perfect. Can you press the button? Yes. I want to. Okay, the bottom we don't really care because it's in the context. Okay. We have new. We have only new from the beginning. What is it? Am I supposed to have like backwards for new?
I think it's turned toward to.
Oh, okay.
Oh, shit.
Is that what
Is that what you're not doing?
So this is to where?
Yeah, that was.
Can you go to the top of this? Please,
Well, am I importing it? Maybe that's.
try.
No, well, yeah. It's cross border and it's to the game.
It's a process of elimination. Because that explains why it's not good. Because I was trying to figure out why it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's on the view file.
Yeah. So now we ask questions.
I have no idea. Everyone, I see your
Split board is right.
I think people have to take the required to
All right. All right, let's try to get into this a little bit more. Okay, so your next task is we got to bind events to this, right? We need to set up a situation where every time somebody clicks on an LI, we can see what they've selected, and then we will try to eventually make a move. Okay, so we're going to try to create this. We're going to write something that says bind events. Bind events. So listen or click. On click. Make call. On click. Call to make move. And then in make move, check if valid. Check if valid. If it is, place the mark. Switch players. Else, well, we're going to have a play method. So for now, else just call display board for now. Okay? That's your goal. So you've got 2 functions to try to work on for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll walk us through it. Yes, both of those, find events and make a move.
Same thing as mine. It says this board is no board is not defined in the game.
Okay, who had this around? Check this off. Okay. Mommy, I'm getting this.
So everything is linked to each other. Yeah, everything is linked to each other. It's also linked
My issue was in the game.
there, it's running to protect everything.
And also,
Did you edit this file? No, that's not what I'll complain about. I'll say it's the first one.
About you.
gonna lie you a whole lot right now about it
So when you import, you are importing this. It's not that you're importing the lowercase, you're creating a variable. So this is the name of your variable because they're
Thank you. Mine's the spelling errors. That's
I swear to God.
Yes, I need that 4 before that happens. Oh my
Yeah.
Well, he hasn't.
No.
What's the arrow? What's the arrow? So that inner HTML. You know, everybody has like different arrows. No, I just figured out my arrows. What was the arrow?
All right. All right, let's give this a shot. Clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Clap your hands twice if you can hear my voice. I know this is brutal. We will get through it, and then we'll have a break, right, for the next couple days where we can reflect on this. Question our life decisions. Right. How do we do on this? No? Yes? Okay. Any better than the first one?
Yeah.
Maybe? Okay. Maybe not. Some people say yes. That's great. All right. So we say we're going to make a bind events. I'll just kind of lead this, I guess, then. So we'll say bind events. Jingle jangle. Where's that coming from? Eric, nice. Christmas season. Okay. So what we need to do is we want to listen to that div, right? That includes the board div, right? Remember we added that inside of our tick, which we can look at if we evaluate. If we study this here and we go, okay, we'll look at the elements. We can see that we have our TTT, and then we've got this board div, and the board div has our rows in there. Cool. So let's go ahead and grab the board div, which I'll just call tick for now, for like tic-tac-toe. And I'll say document dot, how do I grab it? Cool. Query selector. And we'll say board div. And then I want to add a listener to it, right? So I'm going to say tick dot add event listener. And what should I be listening for? The click, right? Click. And do I need to have an event? Do I care what the event is in the callback?
Yes.
Yes. Why? Because we're going to place a mark, and in order to do that, we need to know where I clicked, right? So we need to know where that event occurred. So I'm going to go ahead and pass an E. Oops. So on the click, we're going to fire this, and I want to see exactly what was selected. And so how can I access the text of what I selected? Rafid? Of what? We're close. Okay, so we're really close. Can anybody help them get there? So let selected equal what? E, yeah, I like that. So E is the whole event. Dot target, that's going to give us where we are. I like that. Take me all the way home. Dot inner text. Right, so once I've got this, all that's left is for me to make the move, is what we said we were going to call. So we'll say this dot make move, and we'll pass in selector. Now we don't have a make move yet, so let's go ahead and write that next. So we'll go down here. We'll say make move, and it will take in a move. And I want to remind us when we had our game class and we had a inside of our play somewhere, right? We had this whole idea. Player get move, place mark of current symbol, and then we had switch players, right? So knowing that we had that available in game, we can use similar logic inside of make move. So I'm going to check if it's a valid move. So I'll say like, hey, if this dot game make move is. I am not inside of find events. No, I'm inside of my class. Am I? Okay. I am totally wrong. Good catch. Nice catch. I couldn't be more wrong. Thank you. Okay. Very good catch. And way to stick up to me when I said, I think I'm right. You're like, no, you're not. But you're 100% right. Okay, so we're going to say this dot game dot board, because our is valid move is on the board class. So we can say dot is valid move. Right, so it's hard. You kind of have to remember everything that you wrote previously. And we'll pass in the move. And so if it is a valid move, we got to go place this mark. Right, and that was also part of the board class. So I'll say this dot game dot board dot place mark. Now I'd like to say that if I had set up my game class with maybe a slightly better API, I could have just said like this dot game dot place mark, and then it would have called this dot board dot place mark, and it might have been a little bit of nicer format than keying so deeply into this. But since we've already got it in a certain way, I'm just going to leave it for now. And so placeMark takes in 2 arguments. Right? It takes in the current player. So I'll say this.game dot current player dot symbol, and it takes in the move. Right? A little nasty, but it will do. And then if someone made a move, what needs to happen? We got to switch players. So how would I write that? This.game dot switch players. Players was in the game, not on the board, right? And then we said we were just going to print display board for right now. This dot display board. Right, so let's see if this kind of works. So after I call display board for the first time, let's also just call this dot find events. We'll save it. And we'll go check on our code. Refresh. When we click on something, did something break? Well, we got one thing. Oh, but then it called display, and we didn't recall bind events. Right? We only called bind events once, and when we did display board, it clears the board. So we called it, so it cleared the board, made it, found the events, and then we made the move, and then it called the board again, but it never called to bind the events again. So that's why we can only make one click right now, but we do see that we are having some success.
Did you invoke this dot display board?
Yes.
When I did that, it cleared my board
But it should then redraw it.
HTML, and then says you cannot procreate over this file.
Sounds like you have a different Webpack problem. We can look at that in a minute. Yeah. So the question is about move. What about it? Okay, so believe it or not, our game is actually almost over. We've done most of the logic here, right? We just have to get kind of this play loop to occur. So instead of calling this dot display board so many times, instead we're going to call this dot play. Okay, so at the very top, let's see what we can change. I'm going to change display board here so that after I've made a move, I'm just going to call play again. So we haven't written play yet, but we will. And at the very top, instead of calling display board and bind events, I'm also going to call this dot play. And our goal now is to write a play method. Okay, so this play method should update the player text with whose move. Should display board and bind events. And then also, if the game is over, it should show winner. So if game is over, show winner. Okay? These are all just broken. So work on this for the next 10 minutes or so. I know it's tough. We're almost there though.
Okay, I think yes, but you should have both. Yes. So I think you might not have happened something happening. It's Jeremy, please.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh no, I fixed it. I had it the wrong one. Yeah.
We're close.
Sorry.
We're very close.
I think we're gonna make it. Rough one.
Do you have to create one side? I think you have a nice house. Which and if you don't have it, yes, you need to. Get okay, let's go down a bit. It's also stories. Okay, yes, you might need to. But basically, so I noticed that what I had when I did
I know it's tough. It's okay. Right, so almost done with the end. This is about to work. If you think about how much longer it's not
I Oh, because I got rid of I got rid of the other stuff. Did I miss something else? And play.
So the issue is here, right? A log is the game. It points back to the CID. You guys see what it calls
I mean, don't get me wrong, it can be useful, but to not have it be so oh, there you are. Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, Indonesia, the buying, beautiful, something about really want to select something. I'm not appreciating that so much behind you, so I don't know.
Same thing happens Did you fix your and don't hesitate to do that in the future. It's something very which is why do you see this? I tried to shift.
I check back again.
Oh, yes.
All right. Let's go over this one too, yeah? Clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Okay, how did this go? It's a brutal one, yeah? It's okay, right? We're gonna get there. It's a tough. This is a tough day. I did warn them, right? To be totally fair and transparent. Okay. So it says we should update the player text with who's moved. So we have a player text div, right? So let's go ahead and grab that. So I'm gonna say let player text document dot query selector, and we're gonna say player text, yeah? I think that's what it's called. So before in our game loop or our play, right, we did this while the game is not over. So if we do that, does anybody know why that might become a problem? Can anybody guess? Why can't I do it like the same way as before, where I said like while? Yeah. Oh no, we have a game over, I think. Do we? Well, maybe we don't. We have a game over, yeah. Well, I probably should have called that is game over. That probably would have been a little bit better. So when we're waiting for a player's move, is that synchronous or asynchronous? Who's on team async? Who's on team sync? So, well, I'm pretty sure we are listening for a click from document.addEventListener, right? When we have an event listener, is that synchronous or asynchronous? All right, so let's ask it again. So when we're waiting for a player's move, is it synchronous or asynchronous? Asynchronous. Is a while loop synchronous or asynchronous? Synchronous. Perfect. So if a while loop is synchronous and it's waiting for something that's asynchronous, right? Infinite loop. So we can't do that. So instead we're going to check for something else. Instead we can say, hey, if this game game over. So if this is in fact game over, let's change the player text to be player text dot inner text, and we'll say this dot game dot. Let's add like a show winner function, because that would be pretty clean if we had that. We don't currently have that, but we can make it in a minute. And then we'll just say this dot display board, because we still do want to be able to see the board after the game is ended, right? Okay, so let's go back over to our game and just kind of quickly make a show winner. So I hinted at this earlier. I said that this could be made into a show winner. So I'm going to copy all of this code. and I'm going to go ahead and make it. So I'm going to say show winner. And we don't want console logs right now. Instead, we want returns. So let me just get this tabbing correctly. And so we say, hey, if this.board.winner is equal to this.player1.symbol, we can go ahead and return. This.player.name wins. Else if, instead of logging, we'll just, again, we'll return. Right, so we have to make a couple changes. Else, the game is a tie. So we will return. And now we have the show winner. Does that part make sense? It's the same logic that we had incorporated before when the game was over. We've just extrapolated it into its own function. And instead of console logging, we're just returning text. That's all that's doing. So with that, inside of our Vue.js, we can say, hey, if the game is over, we'll change the inner text to be whatever that says. And then we'll display the board one last time. Else, we'll do something else. So we'll say else. We'll call this .displayBoard. We have to bind our events. This .bind events. And we'll add something that says whose turn it is. So we'll say this, not this, player text dot inner text, and then we'll say it's the current player's name. So we'll say this dot game dot current player dot name, and we'll say plus, like it's your turn. Okay, so if the game's not over, we want to display the board, we want to bind the events, and we want to say whose turn it is. By doing that, when we've bound the events, it's just going to wait until we make a click. Once it makes a click, as we remember, if we can remember from bind events, it's going to make the move, and then it's only going to make the move if it's valid. And at the very end of make move, it's going to call play again. So that's how we're going to restart again. That's how we're going to keep that cycle going. That's kind of a fun idea, right? Let's talk about it one more time. So in our play, if the game isn't over, it's going to draw the board and bind the events. Nothing will happen. We'll just have that board printed to the screen. But the events will be there sitting and waiting. As soon as somebody clicks on it, it's going to go, oh, interesting. I've been waiting for this event my whole life. Let's fire this callback. We'll check the inner text of what you clicked on, and I will then try to make the move on the select with the selected move. In my make move, I'm going to check if it's valid. If it is, I'll place the mark and switch the players. And then no matter what, I'll recall play again. And then play will then run again and check if the game is over. If not, it will draw the board and bind the events again. That's the game loop. Right? That's replacing this while statement. It's allowing us to have some asynchronicity. All right, so let's take a look. We'll refresh. It says, Corey, it's your turn. I go on 1. Beavis, it's your turn. They go on 0. Corey goes on 2. Beavis on 9. Corey on 3. Oh, I missed the click. And it says Corey wins. That's the end of the game. I cannot click anymore. Right? That's a successful tic-tac-toe game. It visually doesn't look great yet. That's pretty easy to change. What? How did you lose to yourself? It's an unusual board. Okay, questions on this? So we've got for the most part, the game working. But we still have this nice play again button. Right, because it'd be way more fun if I could then click and play the game again. All right, I think we're going to be able to do this one. Inside of our constructor, after we call this dot play, we're also going to call this dot play again. Oops. Okay. Play again. And I think, okay, I'm definitely going to give you guys a chance to write this. I want you to grab the button, grab button. Well, I don't know why it does that. Grab button. Listen for click. Refresh board. Call play. So you will need a new method in your board class. Or a new method in game class. Sorry. New method in game class to make new board. Okay? You guys can do it. We're very, very close. And at the end of the day, you'll look back and you'll see that we actually didn't write too much code. It's just a new idea. All right, remember all those steps. Those will be a guide.
So lucky you expect quick
submit, we like type. File type. So
But you know how like sometimes it's like hard enough, but it means that you exactly.
I'm the navigator, you drive. Got it, yeah. So you have to refresh the board, so you're going to need to make a method in the game class to make a new board. And then you're going to call play. We were there once already.
go to console log and choose our context and show it was the It doesn't take about
Okay, let's finish this sucker up, yeah? Clap your hands once if you can hear my voice. Okay, how did this one go? Okay, we actually got some ups. You want to help me through this, Fowler?
Yes. So we're gonna start by grabbing the button, and then we're
Okay.
gonna in the query selector, and I'll leave the name of the button and play again.
Okay.
Hashtag the button.
Okay, so that was grabbing the button.
We're
We
gonna
can check that off.
give our button an event listener.
Okay. So we're going to add an event listener to our button.
And we're gonna listen for a click.
We're going to listen for click. I know you can't see that, sorry. Okay.
And then our event that we want to happen is we're going to go to our game class.
Hang on, I've got messed up here. Okay, so what do we want to happen when we go into this?
When we go to our game class, we're going to create a new method.
Okay, so he says in the game class, we're going to create a new method. Let's call it play again. Is that cool? I know you called yours refresh. Okay, and what are we going to do in there?
And then this board is going to be equal
Equal to a new board. Cool. Anything else we need in there? Okay. And we'll go back to our view class.
And then we're going to say that this dot game dot play again.
Yep.
And then this dot.
And then we're going to call this stop play again to get the whole game started again. So let's go try it. We go here, we start typing. Oh, I actually want to just play again, restart the game. It fixes itself. And we have a winner, and we're going to play again. And it's working. Very cool. Questions on that? Isaiah?
Should we also use the current player to player 1 and play again?
Not necessarily. It's up to you, yeah. So I'm not going to go into this part because I think we're kind of done. But as if you want your own little personal bonus, which maybe we'll show later at a later time, but it might be good to work on, is see if you can still have a computer player instance that just randomly chooses a spot. And in order to do that, you'll have to add an else if to check if the current player is an instance of computer player. And then you'll go and get the move. It's a very minimal amount, but it would go right here if you're following. If you're not following, this is enough. Let's quickly add a little bit of some CSS to it so it doesn't look completely like trash, yeah?
What did you do in the game project?
I just set the board to be a brand new board. That would clear it, give us a new fresh start. So how am I going to style this? Well, if I look into here, I can see that I have these ULs, like a row, and I can practice styling on this. I could say like display flex, and that's going to move it in the right order. List style none. I can give it a margin of like 0. This is things we're going to learn. So I'm going to go ahead and make a CSS file. So let's go ahead and just call this like master.css. Yes, master. We need to link this file similar to the way we linked at the beginning of the game. So in our index.html, instead of writing script, we're going to write a link tag. And it's going to come with this href property. And we'll again do the relative path to that CSS. So we'll say /master.css. The link tag, link property is how we put styles in. Okay, and I know we don't really know a lot of CSS, so I'm not going to like talk through it too much, but I am just going to give us kind of like a baseline of what it is. Okay. So inside of our master.css, I'm going to select all of my rows. So this is just kind of a small preview of what's to come with CSS. Right? It's the same kind of selection that we use for query selector all. I'm going to give it a display of flex. So you put in an object and then you start to say the properties, but you separate them with semicolons instead of commas. I'm going to say list style none, margin at 0. This one's kind of annoying. I'm just doing this in order to not have a default property that's already in there, padding inline start at 0. Otherwise, UL start 40 pixels in by default. And I'm going to give each row a border bottom. Of 2 pixels. So that's 2 pixels wide. And I'm going to make it solid black. These will be the lines. and we can kind of see what it looks like right now. It looks like this. Yuck. But on its way. Let's keep going. Again, I'm going to say row, and I can control my li. I can say from inside every li inside of the row will have this property, but I can also specify which li I want. So for this one, I'm going to say colon. I want the very first child, so the first li in each row. I'm going to give it a border right. Border right, 2 pixels, solid black. And I'm going to also do this same thing again, but with the last child. Okay, so what does that look like now? Now it looks like this. We're getting there. Kind of can see what it's looking like. It looks like I need to end on the last row. I need to have no border. So I'm going to go ahead and say dot row, last child, and I'm going to say border bottom, none, because I do not want a border on the bottom. So now it will look like this. We're getting somewhere. And then let's give the LIs some flair. So to do that, we can say row, and then we'll get all the LIs instead of all the rows. We'll give them a padding of 5 pixels. That's going to give some space around the letters or the characters. I'm going to give them a width of 45 pixels. I'm going to give them a height of 45 pixels, so they're squares. I'm going to say text align center, because I want the text to be in the center of the square. And I'm going to give them a giant font size, font dash size, and that's going to be 35 pixels. Right? We'll go back, look at what we have now. Okay, it's starting to look pretty good, except for the lines still stretch all the way over. What do you mean second call? Oh, okay, so that's because I did row last child and I did border right. This should be border left. Thank you for that catch. So right now, if I hover things, it just looks kind of like a text thing. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. So I'm going to say, go back to my row and all the LIs, and I'm going to give it a property of hover by doing a colon and writing hover. So when I hover over it, I want the cursor to be a pointer. And then I have my player text. So how do we select player text in JavaScript? .div. How do we select it? Uh-oh. Query selector, and then what? The hashtag, right? That's the selector. So CSS is the same, so I'm going to say player text with the hashtag. I'm going to give it a padding of 15 pixels. I'm going to style my play again button a little bit. So hashtag play again. Let's give it some flair. Let's give it a padding of 10 pixels. Let's give it a border radius of 5 pixels. Let's give it a margin of 10 pixels. Okay, let's go check our work. starting to look a lot like what it looked like in the beginning of class. It's good because I'm using my notes, so it should. Let's have a hover when we go over that button. So we'll say play again, hover, cursor. Again, we want it to be a pointer, right? Because usually when you hover over something, it turns into a pointer. And let's style our tictactoe div. So I'm going to say tick, or I call it TTT, right? TTT. Let's give this a width. And we'll say that we want it to be the min content. So as small as it can be and still hold all the content. And we'll give it a margin of auto. That will allow it to go into the middle of the page. If you don't remember all of these, it's like totally fine, right? We're going to be going over this a lot more in detail. And let's also just give our body a thing. So how would we select the body with a query selector? We would just write body, right? Because it's the name of the tag. Same thing for CSS, body. I'm going to say text, align, center. And let's go ahead and fix the header as well. And we'll say font weight. Font weight. We can say bold. We'll do a font size. And we'll say 35 pixels. And we'll say margin bottom. Let's give it some space on the bottom of it so it's not kissing directly. We'll say 25 pixels. Oops. We'll save it. Run, refresh our page. And now we have our game. Okay? I know that was like a lot of CSS. Don't worry if you didn't follow along. I'm going to push it all, and you can copy the file for yourself. All right, so just a brief overview of what we did, because it was a lot. Okay, the first thing we did today was npm install webpack and then webpack-cli, the command line interface. We then created a webpack.config.js file where we set up our webpack configurations, where we said the entry point was going to be index.js and that we wanted it to create an exit point of bundle.js. It's going to bundle all of our files together into one specific bundle.js. We then created an index.html. We added our script tag to point to our bundle, and we created a header for tictactoe, a div for the player text, TTT for the game, as well as the button to play again. The next thing we did was create our index.js file, where we imported the things we would need, right? The other classes, which we use this new import view from file name. Oops, sorry about that. We created a DOM content loaded listener on the document. We created a new instance of game, and then we went and grabbed the element from the HTML. From there, we created a new instance of view and passed in the game instance as well as the element that we grabbed from the DOM. Okay. Inside of our view, we have a couple things. We have our constructor. It creates a game, takes the instance of the game and the element, and then it calls play, and there's also play again. Play again, we'll just go over first because it's a little simpler. Play again grabs the button from the DOM, adds the event listener click. When they click it, it's going to call play again on our game, which goes and instantiates a new board for that game, and then it calls play. So the whole function, again, the whole game is basically run off of this play. The way play works is it grabs the element for player text, and then it's going to update it. So it's going to say, hey, if this game is over, it's going to show the winner, which was the second half of the old play method that we had in our game. We just rewrote it to return the string instead of log strings. And so after it shows the winner, it's going to display the board, but we don't call bind events because we don't want people to be able to continue to click on the board after it's complete, right? Because then the game would never end and people would just keep switching it. That would be an unpleasant experience. Otherwise, if the game's not over, it's going to display the board, and it's going to bind the events and update player text to say whose turn it is. So display board grabs the div. It sets the inner HTML to be an empty string. That way it clears it out, and it's going to redraw this board every time. It creates that board div. It's going to loop through our board, which we did by adding a reveal function to our board class. And then it's going to go through every row. And for each row, we're going to create a UL. And then we're going to iterate through each row and create an LI for every single value. We give that LI the inner text of the value, and we append that to the UL, and then we append the UL to the game div. After the double for loop, so we've iterated through the entirety of the matrix, we append the actual game div to the main element that we passed in at the very beginning of instantiating the view class. We've also called bind events. What that does is it goes on and grabs that board div, which has all of the ULs and LIs, and it says, hey, I'm listening for a click. When there's a click, I'm going to look at the target that the click was on, and I'm going to grab the inner text from it. So that's either going to be one of the numbers, or it's going to be an X or an O. It's going to be something. And then it's going to try to make a move with whatever was clicked on. Make a move is going to say, hey, if this is valid, I'm going to go ahead and place the mark and switch players. Otherwise, so it's going to do that only if that, and then either way, it's going to call play again. And then it's going to play again. I mean, that's actually the end of the game. Play just goes and runs it again, where it says, hey, let's play this again. Is the game over? Is it not over? And that's it. That's everything we did today. Oh, then we also did some styling in the CSS, but I don't think we really need to go over that because that's not the point. And I think I deleted something. What's up?
There's a period 64.
Thank you.
How did you link the master CSS to the HTML file?
Okay, I can go over that too. The question is, how did I link the master CSS file to the HTML? I created a link tag with the href pointing to our master.css file on our line 8. All right, so that's all. I know it was a super duper heavy lesson. I totally get that. It's a little overwhelming. Yeah. Sleep on it tonight, right? Check it out again tomorrow. Try to look through it. Try to follow it, right? And you can apply it to your hangman game. If your hangman game is built out, you really only will need to maybe add a couple methods in there, but you're really just building out one more class that instead of it being interpreted through the command line, it's interpreted through the browser. Okay? All right, good luck. Great job, everybody. We made it. We made it.